So this Purposeful Memoir work is based on my book by that title. And I'm just going to briefly introduce what I mean by Purposeful Memoir. It's a contemplative process that is valuable for everyone. I don't think it's just for memoirists. It's good for everyone. I think it's the inner work that's necessary for effective activism in the world. It's kind of like the pre-work that you need to do in order to be effective in your outer work. And the idea is looking back in order to understand both the past and the present more fully, and then to start thinking more intentionally about the future. So it has this temporal flow to it that goes into the future from the past. And it's purposeful in asking how our life story might be a benefit to others. So it's not just, journaling is sort of just done for its own sake. Purposeful memoir, particularly if you think about sending it out into the world in various forms, you're thinking about how your life experience might be helpful to others. Key techniques would include, the elemental journey. So I have organized life stages by the elements, earth being childhood, water being youth, fire being the challenges that we face at all times of life, and air being the space of reflection. And I found that a helpful way to think about life experience. I do archaeology, so thinking not just about our lives, but about how our individual life stories rest on the deeper stories of our ancestors and the deeper collective histories on which our own life experience is based. I like to try to coach people to align the personal story with the political or collective story of their time and place, and then the planetary story. So what has happened in your personal life against the broader backdrop of what's been going on in the collective life of the community, the nation, the world, and the more than human world. And then the alchemy of purposeful memoir. I have found through many years of teaching memoir that when you ask people to think about their life story, they often jump to moments of trauma, which definitely have life lessons in them. But if you ask them to first look at positive, happy, generative moments in their life story, a different story will emerge. So I try to start with saluting the positive and then transmuting the negative or the challenging moments through a process of fiction. And that is the alchemy part, the magic of fiction. So bringing some fictional techniques into memoir, nonfiction. So the workshop methodology that I use is always timed focused free writing, and we're going to be doing that in this session. And specifically, I ask people to start with lists, which are like seed beds for future writing. And, once you have that list, you can come back to it over and over again and keep cultivating and harvesting more memories from that list. Sketches. So this is something that, again, I've come to after quite a few years of teaching memoir. We're just sketching. So you know that in order to create a great painting, there had to be many, many, many sketches done. And it was valuable. That process of sketching is valuable in itself. So we'll do timed focused free writing. We'll be sketching. And the idea is just to loosen up and see what comes. Not overthink it, not get too caught up in, is this right? Is this wrong? It is what it is. And then reflections. I always leave time for reflections, the air space of reflection. So those are the three techniques that we'll get to today. And a couple of just quotes by way of invocation, a careful first draft is a failed first draft. So we're here to sketch freely and not be too careful. And I don't write about what I know. I write to find out what I know. So you don't have to know or have it all figured out before you start writing. That's what you're there to to explore. So with that very brief introduction, I want to launch into some writing. And we're going to start with a list. So because we're at the Reimagining Education Conference, I'm going to make education our focus for this session. And the first list is going to be a list of specific moments in your life as a child or a youth. So this is earth or water in the elemental journey. When you had a good experience with learning in a formal school setting. Okay, so those are a lot of parameters. Think about childhood or youth. So I usually see that as going from childhood would be birth to about age 12, and then youth would be 13 to 23 or 25 or so. So early childhood to early 20s, make a list, try to note year if you can. So a starting year is helpful. So if you started school when you were 5, you could make a note of that year. And then just these are notes for yourself, right? So make some notes in list form of moments when you remember having a good time in school. Things went well. And this was in the context of your formal schooling. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet and we'll take 5 minutes for this list and then we'll keep going. And I'm going to time it. Okay, so bring that list to a close or a pause for the moment. And we're going to do just going over the same territory in time. So childhood and youth. Make a list of specific moments in your life when you've had a good experience with learning outside of a formal school setting. So the first list was in school. The second list is learning outside of school, outside of the bounds of conventional school building, let's say. Okay, so again, another 5 minutes for this list. This is our seed bed. Okay, so bring that list to a close. And we're going to do 2 short sketches. Now, this is definitely, I'm compressing a lot here. You could spend more time on this, but for our purposes today, we're going to do a first sketch. Take one moment from this list, the first list, of a positive experience learning in school, and sketch the scene. And I'm going to suggest that you try using the second person, possibly also the present tense. So you are sitting in a classroom. So you're getting some distance on yourself. You're looking at yourself in that classroom. And just describe, quick sketch. Where were you? Who was with you? What was happening? How did you feel in that moment? That's a very important question. So sketch, quick outlines. We'll take about 5-6 minutes for this. And then we'll do another sketch. Okay. Okay, so bring that sketch to a close, and then we're going to go right into a second sketch from the list of positive learning experiences outside of school. Again, see if you can sketch out where were you, who was with you, what was happening, and how did that make you feel? And if it was fun to use the second person, do that again. Again, we'll take 5 minutes. All right, so bring that scene to a close, knowing you can always go back into it. And we're going to take some time for the very important space of reflection. So, thinking about the scenes that you just sketched, we're going to do a little comparing and contrasting. What was most powerful about the lessons you learned inside and outside of school? How have these lessons contributed to the person you are today, and perhaps to your understanding of best practices in education? And how could you imagine bringing together the best of learning in school and the best of learning outside of school? What might that look like, feel like? So 5 minutes, a brief reflection on comparing and contrasting these two scenes. And I would submit to you that it was important to dive into those moments from the past in order to be able to write this reflection. You can't just jump right to the reflection. Okay, I will be quiet, let you write about 5 minutes. Okay. So now we come to my favorite part, which is the alchemy. So I told you at the outset that I like to use fictional techniques, even while working in the context of memoir. And also, I like to think about memoir as moving from past through present to future, right? So we're going to do an alchemical scene, imagining a future that could be. So sketch a scene from the future that brings together the best of learning in school with the best of learning outside of school. So what would happen if the artificial boundary between conventional schooling and the rest of life were eliminated? What would happen if school lessons were integrated seamlessly with life lessons? And the primary goal of education was understood to be initiating young people into becoming strong stewards of self, society, and planet. What would that look like, feel like? Can you sketch that future scene in the present tense, second person, and find out? So as you sketch it, as you begin to envision and imagine it, you are bringing it a little bit closer to reality, right? So for this one, I would like to sink in and take a little bit longer. Let's say a good 8 minutes, see what you can do. So try, putting yourself into the future using the present tense and the first or second person, and describe this future scenario where all of what this integration is already in place. It's already happening. What's happening in that future scenario? Okay, I will be quiet and let you write for 8 minutes. Okay, so bring that scene to a close. And we're going to take just a few minutes for a final reflection. For me, the learning outside of school always takes place best in nature. So as a final reflection, how might the world change for the better if we could reimagine education to break down the artificial boundaries between school and life? What might the natural world have to teach us about this integration? Are there ways that even in urban settings, we might be able to bring some of the life lessons our planet offers us into the classroom? And how might this make a difference in our shared future as Earthlings? So just a few light questions for a 5-minute reflection. See what you can do in 5 minutes, and then we'll have a couple minutes to share. Okay. So before I stop my PowerPoint, I'll just go to one last slide to point out that I do have a 4-session Purposeful Memoir as a Quest for a Thriving Future session starting up tomorrow. If anybody's interested, check out my website. So I think I have brought this ship in on time, and maybe we have a couple of minutes if anybody wants to share. Any reflections? How was that for you? Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Jennifer. I really liked the prompts. You kept us moving, but it was all very thoughtful, and it was really interesting to see how the thoughts evolved from the beginning of just the list making, the sketch, and the reflection. So it was really valuable. I've written a lot of memoir type of things, mostly for myself, journaling, etc. But this was still pushed me in a way that was really helpful. So thank you.
Good. Yeah, I have to say I was writing along too, and I found it very, very thought-provoking for the writing outside of school or learning outside of school. I suddenly found myself galloping wildly on a horse when I was like probably about 8, bareback, just out there in the field with my friend, and that was the thing that really stood out as a wonderful learning experience. And you never know.
Mine was similar, but it was riding on a pig.
All right. Riding on a pig.
I'm curious how many people wrote about things that were physical, because that was actually my reflection. It was like, wow, all so many of my meaningful learning experiences were really like I was a very hyperactive kid, but it was like running, jumping, swimming, tennis. Like I was like, wow, I was like I was really like very active, and I realized so much of my learning, so many of my meaningful learning memories are was really the body, was it really physical. So I don't know if other people share had similar experiences.
Yeah. And the classroom seems so confining and so lifeless. Yeah.
There was two things that stood out to me as like really helpful. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the prompts. One was the writing in second person. I thought that was like I'd never done that before. And that
Mhm.
really like shifted something and made it actually easier in some ways to kind of be more like generous with myself somehow.
Mhm.
And then the other one was the focusing on like really explicitly on like positive experiences. I really struggled to think of any. Um, and that in and of itself was like really interesting because it made me like force me to kind of yeah, it's easy to get stuck on like the traumatic, like those big moments, especially when it's like so far back in memory. So I appreciate that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I would encourage you to, sort of take this format and apply it to different strands of memory that you want to follow. So today we were thinking about education, but you can do this with any inquiry, and I think it's really helpful. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I actually wanted to, Roy, I will give you the floor in a second, but I wanted to also support Sierra's suggestion to share, if you don't mind, any of the excerpts from your writing in a shared space. I think
Mm,
it would be amazing to bring these stories together and maybe see what are the synergies and connections as we begin manifesting a different type of education.
yes,
It's
I
like
agree.
it's like I was gonna say I teach restorative practices to teachers. I've done that hundreds of times, and I have done similar prompts actually about like I ask teachers to really reflect on their own, learning, and it is there are patterns and themes that you see from doing that over and over and over again with educators, and one of the things is a lot of most people's most memorable learning experiences are outside of formal learning context. Two, it's almost always relational. People
Mhm.
remember the teacher, they remember the person, right? Like, oh, I remember Mrs. So and so. It's less the lesson than the person that cared for them and loved them and understood them. And yeah, so yeah. But thank you. I love these questions. They're great.
All right. Well, shall we bring this to a close and keep going?
Yes.